Broadcasting live from the horrible, revolting seed core on the plain of New Phyrexia, it's TapTapConcede! Hi, everybody, I'm Kathleen.
And I'm Cameron.
And we are here. James wrote down talking about card reveals on Slack, but Cameron and I are the only ones here because Nelson couldn't make it and Graham's playing Final Fantasy right now, so we're going to be nerds.
What a refreshing change of pace.
Oh, yeah, finally, we get to speak our minds and not have to, conform to everything else that we do. We're not already fiercely the way that we are by choice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We get to be unapologetically ourselves, unlike everything else that we do.
Yes, exactly. We are going to talk about lore. We're going to give you, I mean, a lot of stuff happens. We're going to give you, but the best TLDR we can about what is actually happening in the one story. We both just read it, so we're super fresh on the details. And then we're going to give you our thoughts about that story. But before we get to all that, I want to say, first of all, that this podcast is brought to you by CardKingdom.com. CardKingdom.com is a veritable kingdom of cards, and if you use our affiliate code and say, Loading Ready Run sent me button, please, you'll get a button. And the button right now says, a pox upon the auto tapper. And I think that's pretty good. I think that's very accurate. It's a good button. But the button is brought to you by Card Kingdom, but everything else that we do is brought to you by you through the support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingready1. We really appreciate your support. It helps us keep the lights on. It helps us pay people. Like, we really appreciate that we get to make this content for you. So thank you for supporting it. And if you're not a supporter on Patreon, but you want to, consume the content, tell people you like it, show it to other people, leave comments on YouTube, and do all of that bingly-dingly engagement that we always.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we really don't talk about it as much as other content creators.
Yeah. Well, I assume that, our audience just knows that the etiquette is to ring that bell.
A sophisticated group of people does not need repeated instructions.
No, absolutely not.
All right, so we are two black-aligned planeswalkers here, Cameron and I, and we are here to discuss lore. But first, if I haven't talked enough, a little note. So I already cleared this with Cameron. Back when I was a kid, I watched the Star Wars movies for the first time, and I really liked them, except Empire Strikes Back. I did not like Empire Strikes Back as a kid because I was a child. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't really have a concept that there was a
future.
I was like, my dad's like, it's fine. There's a third movie, but at the time it was very devastating, right? Because everything seemed to be going wrong, and all our heroes were in a bad way. It was not good. Everything seemed to be going, and I had a visceral, emotional reaction of, I don't like this. I like these people. I want to see them succeed. And so I've noticed, it's not a universal, but it is fairly common, that people have complained for years that the Magic story has no stakes. And now there's a lot of stakes, and it looks like some of our favorites are permanently going away, and people are, there's a I would say a noticeable contingent of people who are like, I don't like this, because this is Magic having an Empire Strikes Back moment, and we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know if people are going to be okay. Is this thing going to be like they get snapped back at, Endgame, or is this... Some of them we could do without, and we'd be fine with that. Yeah,
there's been a kind of a proliferation of planeswalkers.
Yeah.
And... yeah, maybe it's time to cull the herd a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, some of them we're quite familiar with and have been hanging around for a while, and we like them and know them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody you don't really know dying is that is sad. So your next door neighbor dying is very tragic and emotionally impactful.
Yeah.
So when it seems like people like Jason Vraska, spoilers, I guess, for the whole podcast.
Yeah. We should probably mention right up at the... now would be a good time to say that this is a fully spoiled podcast for the Magic story around Phyrexia.
Yeah. all sorts of spoilers are happening. And if you want to read the magic story for yourself, even after we give you the TLDR, I really recommend you do. And we're going to have links to all of the magic story. Please note, though, there are 2 extra stories, sort of like that at time of recording were not listed on the side stories page. The side stories page only had 3 of them, and these 2 were sort of in a weirdly separate area that I couldn't access from the website directly, but I found them because one of the authors tweeted about it.
Right.
So that's cool. You probably want that, and we're going to have links in the description for all of that stuff.
Yeah, those 2 are A Man of Parts, which is Tezzeret's kind of epilogue, and Alone, which is Teferi's epilogue.
Yeah. And we'll discuss those maybe in a little less detail than the one story. You can go read them yourself, but they're very good. So I guess with all of that out of the way, shall we get into the one story? Do you want to kick us off, Cameron?
Okay. Well, I mean, the main kind of like 6-part story follows the Planeswalker strike team that has been assembled to detonate the Silex on Realmbreaker, which is Elish Norn's world tree copy that she will use to send Phyrexian invasion forces to every point of the multiverse. And they are attempting to destroy it using a Jace's copy of the Silex.
Jace is going to blow it up.
Yeah, Nahiri's.
Saheeli.
Saheeli.
I got that wrong.
Yes.
Saheeli has made a filigree version of the Silex.
Yes.
Based on what Teferi has gone back in time to look at and, describe to her and all of that. So they have a filigree Silex. So like so many Silexes now. So many soup bowls. Hers seems like it wouldn't hold much soup though. It's like a salad bowl. I think.
Yeah, I suppose so. Or like,
Fruit
you
bowl.
could put, yeah, a fruit bowl would work. Maybe you could put sandwiches in it.
Oh,
right?
I think we should start calling that the fruit bowl.
Yeah, it's it is a very postmodern bowl in that it does not hold anything, but it has the shape of a bowl.
Yeah, it holds memories, I guess. Anyhow,
about as well as my head does.
Yeah. So they're like, all right, we're gonna planeswalk into New Phyrexia, and the first thing that happens when they get there is some sort of shield goes up, and they all get scattered in different directions. So we start from Kaido's point of view, and he's like, oh, this is nice, but it turns out he's like buried in the sand.
Yeah.
And the Wanderer manages to pull him out, but he's like lost his sword and Pon-Chan, whatever that thing's name is.
Yeah, his drone.
His Tanuki drone.
I think he's given up on trying to explain to other people what it is, so he's just like, can you find my drone?
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone's like, oh, you're a little robot dude? Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyhow, so he's lost that stuff, and they're there with Nahiri, and but the Wanderer's spark is unstable, and there's something wrong with New Phyrexia that means she can't stay long. So she's like literally like it's like she's like losing reception, and I loved how that was described. Honestly, it was I was like, I immediately understand what's going on here. Great description. Nahiri's fighting some big monster and immediately gets injured and immediately chooses not to mention it or say anything.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but they all get together and they find malaria eventually. Yeah. They get through and they find out that they're only on the first layer of Phyrexia. They're just on the outside, and it's weird, and basically Phyrexia is arranged like a series of spheres, and that gets explained in more details later, but the important thing is that they need to get down. So they drop through the surface layer, and they finally get to a mirror and resistance camp on the furnace layer.
Yes.
I think that's a pretty good summary of the first part.
Yeah. And in the second part, Nahiri and Malaria use this very, I thought, well-constructed conceit for describing all the layers of Phyrexia, right? Where Nahiri crafts a model under Malaria's instructions so that she can give, like, the Death Star briefing.
Yeah, and Kaya's like, ugh, Nahiri's really powerful.
Yeah. And yeah, this is a lot has to happen in the constraints of a very short amount of, or a relatively constrained amount of words. I would not have wanted to get this briefing as a writer, that you have to basically tell Lord of the Rings in the course of about 50 or 60 pages.
Yeah. Things move along quite briskly. Oh,
Yeah.
but we forgot somebody. They picked up everyone's new favorite himbo.
Yeah, Tyvar.
They pick up Tyvar, who's apparently just fine and hanging out, but been captured by Phyrexians, but he's turned himself to stone to like protect himself while he's waiting to be rescued.
Yeah.
Pretty smart.
Yeah. They find Tyvar kind of suspended between a bunch of pillars with Phyrexian stuff like bonking off of him.
Yeah, so they get him down. They all go down together, and they go down. They get the Death Star briefing, which is an excellent summary. Everybody gets some sort of magical Mirren metal to sort of protect themselves. Tyvar, because he can make his skin take on the properties of the plane around him. Realizes he can coat himself in hex gold, which is what the Mirrens call it. It's shown on a lot of the Mirren aligned weapons and cards, and that will basically make him temporarily kind of mostly immune from Phyrexian stuff. So that's kind of cool, but it's not a permanent thing, and you know. So anyhow,
they're very clear in describing hex gold as a kind of like a prophylactic measure, but not a cure.
Yeah, exactly. It's the condom against the Phyrexian impregnation almost.
Yeah.
Gross. So anyhow, Malaria notices that Nahiri has been injured and is like, I could treat you. And Nahiri's like, no, we got to go. And they're like, cool, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
like we can cure you when you get back, I guess. It's all the same.
Yeah, okay. I mean, whatever. They're desperate. They pick up Koth, who's like around. They meet back up with Elspeth, who gets there.
Jace.
And Jace, who comes alone. So that means we're down, and Kaya.
Right.
So Kaya and who does Kaya arrive with? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think Kaya and
Elspeth come together?
I think so,
yes.
yeah.
Kaya and Elspeth come together. Jace comes alone. Koth was already there with the resistance. So now we have what remains of our strike team, and we decide to go down. There's a lot of horrible parts of Phyrexia, and we're missing Nissa and Luca. We'll come back to them later. The Mirrens have made a fantasy tunnel that lets you skip a couple of the spheres.
Yep, which I thought was I appreciated that, right? They don't have to deal with the green layer, the labyrinth, or
the blue layer.
Yeah, or the blue layer.
Yeah, the hunter's maze and the surgical bay.
Yeah,
you just skip entirely. Great, that's fine.
I'm fine. I'm sure.
They go right into the Dross pits, where it turns out, unlike all of the other factions, Black doesn't have one strong, unified leader. You have seven people.
Thanes.
You have 7 people fighting sort of semi amongst each other, but also somewhat together.
Yeah,
which is very ambitious.
Yeah, it's the kind of classic. Umberto Eco would identify this as one of the like characteristics of fascism: the constant internal competition, which is supposed to breed, it's supposed to be
survival of the fittest, but it just turns out they kill each other.
Yeah, well, it's survival of the fittest, but the fittest parameter is
constantly shifting.
Well, it selects for the people who are best at backstabbing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And internal competition rather than, any kind of leadership qualities.
It rewards a sociopath.
Yeah.
And it turns out they don't make very good leaders. So anyhow, we skip right down to that layer, and then they're like, oh, this is something I want to mention. Phyrexian oil is now supercharged. Like before, it was you would get, the Phyrexian oil has to get into your blood, which is horrible but believable. But now it's you walk around in the Dross pits and you'll breathe enough mist that you'll turn, right? Or you'll just die.
The Dross pit kind of aerosolizes
oil at this point.
Yeah.
If mist from if any fountains in the surgical bay, apparently it's just airborne and can just enough of it can settle on your skin. You don't have to be injured. So which I think is kind of silly because if all of Phyrexia is that how is anyone left?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I got the impression that the lava pits or the furnace layer is kind of a little more hostile to the oil, and the resistance, what's left of it, spends some time there and a lot of time elsewhere. And at one point, Malaria says, like, oh yeah, like anyone who descends into lower levels just doesn't come back. I'm the only one who can consistently do it.
Wow. But like, cool.
Yeah.
But it seems like then how is any like?
Yeah, it's
like I get it. It's supposed to be bad.
Yeah, it's supposed to be bad.
But it seems too bad. I think they've turned the dial too far.
Yeah.
And like I know it's like magical nanobots essentially, but like we have established like there's certain things where it's like, especially with how much we understand about like aerosolized disease at this point, where it's certain things like, well, this is completely unbeatable then. Like anyhow. Maybe it works differently off Phyrexia. Maybe it's weaker off Phyrexia.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll find out. So anyhow, but luckily Elspeth has brought some magical halo.
Yeah.
So everybody can have a prophylactic chug-a-lug of, like a broad spectrum antibiotics before they go breathe the germ air.
Yep. Which clears Jace's head enough that he is able to find Vraska.
Yeah.
His telepathy has kind of been suppressed by just being miserable in Phyrexia. And the halo clears that off enough that he is able to hear Vraska's distress.
Yeah. Vraska, it turns out, is stuck in Sheldred's Coliseum, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a gladiatorial coliseum because that's what black creatures who can't really die do for fun, I guess.
Yeah, Phyrexian Arena.
Yeah,
right?
It's the Phyrexian Arena.
Yeah, everyone loves it.
Yeah, so he's like, we gotta go rescue them. It's all very cool and powerful because Jace basically casts somebody else's problem field spell over them, and they just walk into the Phyrexian Arena. But then it turns out it's too late for Vraska. He tries to take her on a relaxing date though before they go,
which I thought was actually quite effective. It was probably my favorite part in this. That he tries to craft this quiet, peaceful day for them. Like he wants to give her one last happy day. And, the conversion completes seconds into it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's no longer Vraska. And she like pops that bubble. Right?
Yeah.
So it sets up this kind of like, we will see these characters out, but at least they will have this moment of peace.
No. So rude. Yeah. I do like that she was like, before she got turned, she was like, no, piss off. Leave me alone. Go. And he didn't listen to her. I liked, well, we'll get into our thoughts about it later. Well, let's just keep with the plot now. Yeah. So anyhow, that doesn't work. And then things are going really bad and they get out of the arena. And like, there's just now, because Jace is all like, has been like compromised and is like kind of like mentally having a bad one. Yeah. He can't do the mental magic he just did to like shield them again. And he literally just got stabbed by a Phyrexian stinger. So like, and they're like, oh God, how are we going to get out of here? And Nahiri's like, well, surprise. Turns out I'm probably going to go anyhow. But before I do, I'm going to tear this Coliseum apart. And of course, Nahiri's a lithomancer. And they're like, how do we get down to the lower layer? Because that's where they actually need to get. And so Nahiri picks up the entire Phyrexian arena and smashes it through the floor.
Yeah.
Which is cool as hell.
Yeah, I mean it's the badass moment.
Yeah.
So suddenly they are in the Fair Basilica. Yep. In the ruins of the Phyrexian Arena, and
a lot of other Phyrexians are in the Fair Basilica, and everybody's like,
yeah,
get them.
Yeah, I got the impression that like they see Atraxa suddenly leading a bunch of white aligned Phyrexians against the black aligned Phyrexians they're both like, what the hell just happened? Right? Like I got the impression that Atraxa was just kind of like having coffee. Yeah. And then the Phyrexian arena literally just goes wham and lands right next to her on the ground.
Yeah, she was busy bitching out her subordinates for having emotions.
Yeah. So suddenly everyone is having a bad day now.
Yeah, it's great. It's very chaotic, and I'm like, Good. And I do like Kaya thinking that she, sort of, I think that comes later, but Kaya is thinking about Phyrexians and going, wow, Hope Nihiri died doing that.
Yeah, and
Kaya's so realistic.
yeah, and Kaito's like, how could you? I would simply never wish some death on anyone.
It's like,
Yeah, so, well,
yeah. I really enjoyed Kaya's perspective in this. Kaya just seems like a capable and sensible and intelligent person.
Well, I mean, like I think her her characterization kind of shifts a little bit over the course of this.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at this point, she's very logical. She's
pragmatic.
Yeah, she's a good character to have as your sort of focus at this point because she is not clouded by emotion like the other people, but she is not single-mindedly like, kind of, she's the closest thing we have to, I feel like, me going through there trying to, be like, all right, well, what's the plan here? So
yeah.
I personally like Kaya.
Yeah, exactly. You need people who are focused on something further away than the tip of their nose.
Yes.
In order to kind of remind you, like, well, what's the goal? Mm-hmm. What do we want this to look like at the end of the day? And how do we get to there from here? Okay, then we should do that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Kaya is the backup Silex detonator. Mm-hmm. And she is not, like, super keen to do it because she's, there's a very good chance that you die, right? Even though they're like, well, Urza lived. It's like, Urza wasn't a planeswalker at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Like, Jay says, well, Urza set it off in his lap, and he was basically fine.
It's like I have seen some comments online. It's like all it did was level a continent. It's like, no, it didn't. It leveled a continent, made an ice age, completely changed this entire plane, bound 12 other planes to Dominaria, and caused an enormous time rift. It didn't just blow up an island, as I've seen some people minimizing it. It's like, no, this is not this. This had a lot of long-term effects, right?
Yeah, that we're still dealing with.
So I think that they should have been more specific in the book about all of the things the Silex did, because they're kind of like, well, I mean, it might blow up the plane when they're talking about blowing up the Silex. It might blow up the plane, but it might not. It might, it's probably going to be fine. Maybe it'll kill everyone. But it's probably going to be okay. We'll probably just destroy this Phyrexian tree.
Yeah,
right? And it's like, no, the Silex did a lot of bad things.
Yeah, and Malaria asks them, is this going to destroy Mirrodin? And Jace says, I don't know.
He says, if I say yes, will you still help us?
And she says, if you had said no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? Because I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought that was a good exchange. We both remembered it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was memorable.
Yeah. So anyhow, so they've made a very convenient and great excuse for why they can get into where they need to get to in the very heart of New Phyrexia with basically minimal interference, because all of the black forces, which were already in rebellion against all of the white forces, are now having a big fight outside.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, well, and Kaya's like, I will detonate the Silex if I need to. I really want Jace to do it, though.
Yeah.
And
Jace is pretty much on board with that as well.
Yep,
because he realizes he's being slowly completed and would rather kind of not.
Yeah, he'd rather die before he gets completed, and I think that's fair. So anyhow, they get down, they have to get into the Fair Basilica, but then they have to get even further down into the Seed Core, because that is where Elish Norn has planted her version of the World Tree, which Tyvar repeatedly tells us that we should not call it because that is absolutely horrific and perversion to him.
Yeah,
And I respect that. Yeah, so it's Realm Breaker.
Yeah. He's doing kind of the like...
this is deeply offensive to me.
Yeah, like, I simply said that fish was good enough for Jehovah.
Yeah.
Like, blasphemy.
Yeah. Anyhow, so they get down to Realm Breaker, and it's very it's hard to describe it because it doesn't get like it. I feel like Realmbreaker should have had several pages of description and backstory and like how it got nurtured and stuff like that if this had been a longer book. But we get to know that it looks like the World Tree, except it's white and it oozes red blood, and it's got like, instead of the World Tree having like, I don't know, like it was like 11 or something like that.
Yeah,
10 realms. 10 realms connected to it. It's got like, it just sort of goes up into infinity. They can't see, and they can see that at every like branch of the World Tree there's like masses of Phyrexian soldiers and invasion ships, and they can see that they're already going, so they're too late. It's already connected to the multiverse. That's bad news. They're like, okay, well, down we go. Then they find Koth's bits.
Yeah,
Koth's, not Koth's bits, Karn's bits.
Karn's dismembered and vivisected body.
He's like, but he's a robot, so he's like, sup, dudes?
Yeah, this is unpleasant.
I'm not happy.
Yeah. And I actually forget how the conversation with Karn goes.
I mean, it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like, Maleria and Koth stay behind to help him and to set up, like, explosives, essentially. They want to, like, see if they can get Karn out of there before they do that. Karn's like, no, leave me. And Elspeth's like, should we leave you? And Karn's like, yeah, go. And she's like, you're right, peace, and catches up to everybody else. Because, like, Jace has been like, gotta go, right?
Yeah, like,
essentially.
Every, like, you know, this conversation is great, but every time every 5 seconds is another plane that's being essentially destroyed.
Yeah. So we have Jace, Kaya, and Kaito. They're going to go, they're sort of like, Kaito's there to protect Jace and or Kaya while they set off the Silex, essentially. And we've got Tyvar and now Elspeth, because we've lost Koth. And as they cross a big bridge, we have our, sort of very, movie moment of we see Ajani and Tybalt show up, and they've both been completed. Oh, Tybalt got completed off stage.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, it's it's like, bad news, everyone. Tybalt got completed. Like, what's completed, right?
Yeah. Oh, we did see a cool section in the earlier one where Tyvar and Kaito used their powers to get them into the seed core. They had to like squeeze past a bunch of like oily cables.
Yeah, the mycosynth lattice.
Yeah, they had to squeeze through that, and Maleria can pass through because she's just immune to oil. But everybody else would have been basically immediately turned.
Yeah.
But Tyvar used his magic to coat everyone's body in hex gold, and then Kaito can
use his telepathy to
move metal, and he can just fling the oil off.
Yes.
So cool. Even everyone got to do a thing with their powers.
Yeah. It's like, in D&D where everyone gets to roll the dice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they get down there, and so Elspeth has to battle Ajani, and Tyvar has to battle Tybalt, and Tyvar can turn, basically through his magic, can turn his whole body into hex gold and just wails on Tybalt, essentially, and he has a moment of doubt when Tybalt is like, foolish, you'll never, they're not going to sing stories about you at all, and Tyvar is like, actually, get bent.
Yeah.
Wham, 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 wham.
Yeah, and then he throws Tybalt off.
He stabs him with his own scorpion tail.
Yeah, and throws him off the bridge, and, it's kind of a little set up for the thing where it's like, oh, well, we didn't actually see Tybalt die, and then Tybalt's body just hits the ground and goes splat.
Yeah, I mean,
and you're like, yeah,
maybe somebody will bother to put him back together, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. Nobody likes Tybalt. He's a fool.
Yeah.
But Tyvar does a cool thing where he like brings his like ability to turn something into hex gold. Because if he can do it to other people, he can do it to someone he's holding, and it's very and it turns out hex gold and Phyrexia don't go together.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. And Tybalt's like, it's all very dramatic. Anyhow, Ajani and Elspeth have an anime fight.
Yep.
Where she's like, I don't want to fight you, and he's like, but I just want to love you in my own oily way. And she's like, Ajani, no. And he's like, fine then, wham, wham, wham. And then she's like, oh no, I can't fight my friends. I'm so sad. This is everything. It's terrible. But wait, I have to give up hope. Ka-ching! Stops his blade at the last second. Turns back into Elspeth the Slayer, and then dives down to go help everybody else. because Tybalt is still is taking his time murdering, or Tyvar is taking his time murdering Tybalt. And
take your time, enjoy it.
Yeah, no, this guy is an asshole, and you deserve that. Good for you. So anyhow, what's happening down there?
Well, Jace has, he's pretty intent on setting off the Silex because every moment they waste seems to be another plane that is being invaded by the Phyrexians. And he wants to set off the Silex, but Kaya and Kaito have suddenly decided that setting off the Silex is bad, actually.
Because they're like, wait a minute, this thing, we're too late already. It's already connected. So we're not blowing up this tree and this plane. This explosion is going to channel right through the blind eternities. Could we blow up the blind eternities? Do we blow up every single plane that this thing is already connected to? Well, I was prepared to do a little genocide, but that is too many genocides, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially because I'd be genociding my planes.
Yeah, exactly. This was okay when I was simply blowing up
this oily hellhole.
Yeah, I was okay with this when we were lying to Malaria about what this would do to her plane.
Yeah.
But, now that there's a risk to my home, I'm not so cheery about this. And I was like, well, this is an interesting source of friction in the final chapter.
Yeah, I choose to interpret that as the black side of their alignment coming out, where it's like, well, hold up. I'll kill your thing, but I don't want to kill my... It's like, it's like the inherent selfishness.
Yeah.
Right? But Jace is a super powerful mind mage, and he's like, no, I'm blowing the Silex. Sorry, guys, I don't want to die a Phyrexian. And I'm like, yes, Jace is right here.
Yeah, everything we have seen about the Phyrexian invasion seems to indicate that, once they're on your plane, you're
screwed. They thought they stamped it out here multiple times.
Yeah.
How many times have we killed the Phyrexians only for them to come back worse every time?
Yeah.
You couldn't even breathe the air on this plane. You, as a super powerful planeswalker.
Yeah.
Right? Say they get to Ravnica and one drop of mega oil gets through their highly recycled water system.
Yeah.
Right? So it seems like, I guess the only option, I don't know, perhaps because, this is my, do I have a blue pip? This is my practicality coming out?
Sure.
Maybe,
yeah.
I don't know, but I was like, no, Team Jace here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and then Elspeth shows up and, they are arguing about it. Jace uses his illusions to try to buy himself enough time to set off the Silex, while Kaya and Kaito try to stop him. And Elspeth shows up and you're like, oh, fine, somebody with some sense. And she's like, hey, Jace is trying to set off the Silex.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
And then this is very dramatic and it's very fast. She stabs him with Luxior.
Yeah.
Grabs the Silex and planeswalks out of there as it's blowing up.
Yeah.
And they say that she went somewhere beyond the blind eternities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how she has the power to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll meet Sarah.
Maybe. I mean, she's come back from the dead before.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, she came back from the dead on a plane where, the dead came back all the time. And it was, killing... I don't know what Heliod was thinking. Why wouldn't he just let her leave?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, that's the nature of divinity in Greek mythology.
That's true.
But I... Yeah. So, basically, they fail because they decide not to do it.
And then Elish Norn shows up, and Kaya and Kaito are there, and they're like, "Oh no!" And Jace is dead, according to this. And Kaito grabs Luxior because he's like a weapons dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elish Norn makes Jace's. They say they're very clear to say body. I say, walk over and join them, and you see Tamio, and they're all like, "Well, guess we're enemies now." And I suppose Kaya and Kaito just are like, "Bloop," and planes walk out of there immediately.
Yeah. Oh, and when Elish Norn shows up, she shows up with Tamio and Nissa.
Nissa, right, who's been completed off screen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but how did Nissa get completed? Well, in a side story, which I absolutely guessed this ahead of time, because Luca is not very bright. They go to Luca and Nissa end up somehow in the Hunter's Maze, or they get down to the Hunter's Maze together or something like that, but they completely miss all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And they're completely separated. And after everyone warning Luca about how dangerous Phyrexia is, he's like, meh, it seems like another plane to me, and never thinks about it again. And then is just like, I know best. I know what to do. And, all of these things. He's like, oh, I'm just going to dominate this creature. And every time, every time Nissa's like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, who is she to judge? Like, he's just an awful character.
Yeah. Like, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah. Why are you looking at me why are you telling me that maybe I should be careful? I'm the soldier here, right? It's like, this lady is way older than you and has been around and won a lot more battles than you have, dude, but has no respect for her or anyone else and just does his own thing and literally completes himself.
Yeah. And everyone in the audience is like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Luca, basically, I don't know. At least he was committed to his ideals to the end. This planeswalker can stay dead, as far as I'm concerned. He has been an idiot every time he has shown up. He showed up in Strixhaven and decided to fight against, and decided to join the resistance because they're like, yeah, you are really smart and powerful, dude. And he's like, I am really smart and powerful.
Yeah, thank you for saying nice things about me.
Yeah, I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Yeah.
It's like... He was hopefully such a goon, and I literally just was like, yeah, I think in my head it was Kaya, who is more practical and don't do that, but it turns out it was Nissa. But that was the only thing I got wrong. Poor Nissa. So anyhow, she was stupid, and she followed Luca, who told her he knew where she was going, and then he led her right to the center of the Hunter's Maze, and she got completed. Womp womp. And so yeah, and then we had some side stories, which Tezzeret's side story is basically Tezzeret manages to pull it off.
Yeah, Tezzeret has a goal and he gets there.
Yeah,
which respect, I guess.
They tried to double cross him, but he finally gets his dark steel body. They tried to double cross him by trying to anchor him to Phyrexia with the reality chip, because it takes a very long time to turn dark steel into blight steel. They just basically have to sit him in a hot tub of Phyrexian oil. So he manages to, he's like, you guys forgot I can control minds. And he just uses it. He just grabs another Phyrexian and is like,
yeah,
uses him to smash his way out. He goes to Alara. He goes right back to his home, which I think is great. He's sort of the desperation planeswalk.
Yeah.
I really like this story, honestly.
Yeah, I did as well, mainly because Tezzeret, I found it a little florid at times, but I thought it did a very good job of characterizing Tezzeret as just this guy who only values himself and has done that for so long he doesn't really realize that other people aren't like that all the time. Yeah, he's such a dirtbag. I hate his guts.
He planeswalks to Alara with his new indestructible, basically unphyrexianizable dark steel body.
Yeah.
He sees that Phyrexians start invading. He tells some kid to take a message to
Rafik of the Many.
To Rafik, and then just leaves.
Yeah. He's like,
all right, peace. I'm not going to stay and defend my home that I guess just got kind of emotional. I mean, him trying to help at all, I guess, is him being emotional.
Yeah, but it does set up Alara as, what the story describes as a quagmire for the Phyrexians, because Bant has, this legion of soldier angels who should, in some way be able to fight the Phyrexians without being completed, because they've established that Halo, which was this not drug,
just magical angel juice.
Yeah, magical angel juice from New Capenna was at least kind of again a prophylactic against Phyresis, that it would slow it down. And so if Bant can organize and not be taken completely by surprise, they might be able to slow down the Phyrexian invasion across the multiverse significantly. And then Tezzeret planeswalks away to his... He goes to Kamigawa, right? He tries to find a safe house that had been set up by the Infinite Consortium. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, hey, I remember that from 2003. And if you're on it was a very Akira moment where he gets menaced by a biker gang, an Izumi biker gang.
He keeps getting menaced by people. People are like, hey, you look weak. And he's like, let me show you how strong I am.
Yeah. It's like, street thugs keep rocking on up to this guy made out of dark steel and being like, I feel I can steal your wallet.
Yeah, I do appreciate he went easy on the kids from Alara.
Yeah, by the time this biker gang on Kamigawa shows up, he's like, look, I've had a really long day, and he just kind of like takes all their bikes and crumples them together. Mm-hmm. It's a very Akira moment, know. I love those scenes in a movie where a bunch of mooks just get like annihilated by somebody. It's very satisfying. I don't know.
Tezzeret is basically, his entire body is dark steel except for basically his head and his spinal cord.
Yes.
That's Ethereum.
Yes.
Tezzeret is like nigh indestructible. He has one weak spot, essentially.
Yep.
And Ethereum's not particular. It's not like flesh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like his weak spot is made out of
adamantium.
Yeah. So he acquires a bunch of resources on Kamigawa from his safe house,
and then goes to the old fortress of the Infinite Consortium.
Yeah, which is on a lifeless plane
that's not connected to anything. Like that other people, he doesn't even know its name.
Yeah,
it's like Jace had scrubbed the location from his memory, and it only just came back. Mm-hmm. So basically, he's going to sit there and gather power.
Yeah,
being an asshole.
Yeah, on a plane that the Phyrexians can't really meaningfully interact with. Mm-hmm. And he's just going to wait this out.
Yeah, so he's super powerful and nigh indestructible. Mm-hmm. I'm excited for Tezzeret to be used again. I like Tezzeret as a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's got, what are his motivations? His motivations now are always like selfishness.
Yep.
And like being on top and just, getting what he wants. But now he should have what he wants. So what does he want next?
Yeah. Well, I think he's quite motivated by no longer being, bound to Bolas.
And Elish Norn.
And Elish Norn.
So yeah, next time he's going to want to be the only person in control. I could see this bringing him into conflict with Obnixilis. Mm-hmm. To which I say, let them fight. They both have sort of similar, like, I want to be the boss and I don't want anyone to boss me around because I've been bossed around and I don't like it.
Yes.
Kind of vibes. But anyhow, so there's Tezzeret. And then we have another side story with Teferi. I also really like this side story.
Yes, yeah. I like Magic Story a lot when it focuses on character rather than the meta plot or explaining the meta plot. But the Teferi story I thought was quite good. It gives Teferi a lot of room to breathe and reflect on things that he's done and deal with the consequences of the choices he's made. And find his resolve to face what is coming up. Yeah,
it's great. As far as plot-wise, turns out after it's like 400 years, Teferi has somehow fallen out of the time stream. Spirit and body now reunited. He's on Zalfir, which has been phased out from Dominaria for hundreds of years because he'd made a big oopsie.
Yeah.
So people are mad at him, but also recognize that he's probably the only person who can get them back.
Yes.
So everybody's furious, but nobody wants to hurt him or kill him. They just want to tell him, and I think justifiably so, they are pissed.
Yeah.
But he's back in Zalfir. He goes and sees the queen, and it turns out that they have captured the Wanderer. They have a little amber prison that they can keep her in that will prevent her from planeswalking away. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of good. So Teferi can really take his sweet time finding her. But I don't know how long he's been on Zalfir for before all this happens.
Yeah, the story is very cagey about how much time has elapsed. But when Teferi wakes up, he knows that the strike team has failed. Yeah, and that the invasions across the multiverse are beginning.
But Teferi is like, yeah, okay, we can do this.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not sure how you're coming to that conclusion, my dude, but I guess I mean,
You know more than I do.
Yeah, we've had more Magic sets announced for the future, so I guess this isn't where the plot ends.
I mean, all he needs to do, because here's the deal: Zalfir is phased out of the universe essentially. So I think that's why, like, he can do chronomancy as it concerns Zalfir. But I don't think he can do chronomancy as it concerns things outside Zalfir, because he couldn't make the sun go up and down.
Yeah.
But he could move himself around. He could stop time around him. He could retrace the history of a path. I mean, maybe it's just that he was really tired or something.
You could also not planeswalk.
Yes.
Right. So, there are seeds being planted there about how we're going to resolve this.
Yeah.
But
I feel like we get Zalfir back.
Yeah. But this, this story is the one where the good guys lose in the end. And will set up for
March of the Machines.
Yeah.
Which I've already seen key art for, and it's got all sorts of, like, all your favorite people from all your favorite planes, all sort of fighting together. So we'll see how that happens. So that is your 45-minute summary of all of the Magic story, but please go read it yourself.
Yeah.
We have thoughts.
Yeah. I like these stories a lot more when it focuses on a single character and you get to spend a little bit of time with them and their rationale for things, and you explore their character. I guess what I'm saying is that I prefer Magic Story less when it's a summary of the events of a set and more when it's a character study into these people that we only really see as cards.
Yeah.
So, Sean McGuire, she's a really celebrated sci-fi author, genre author. I feel like her brief was extremely specific about what points she needed to hit.
There's a lot of business in this story that needs to be occurred.
Yeah, exactly. I was reading it and I really felt that this was like, okay, I need you to do this thing where Frodo meets the Fellowship goes to Mordor and destroys the ring. You have 50 pages. Go. Yeah.
Local area woman thinks thing that she has seen is like other thing that she has seen. But one of the things that I've been doing is I've been reading the classic Nancy Drew novels to Penelope. And so occasionally, Graham will be like, hey, what happened in the book? And Penelope's like, and it's just not that she doesn't understand it. She honestly has a great recall of what's going on, but there's always something happening in a Nancy Drew story. It's not just like, okay, we're going to go here and we're going to investigate and we're going to find this. It's like, okay, well, we found out that there was a stolen carriage and a stolen horse. And then we went there and it turns out somebody has been spreading witch rumors about Nancy Drew. And then there's a missing girl that we thought we found, but it was her cousin who looked exactly like, who gave a clue to the missing furniture that was stolen by this guy who's a criminal from another town. I'm literally recounting 4 chapters of one Nancy, and they're not long chapters. And that is not the whole book, right? There is a lot of stuff that happens, and there is very little room for character development.
Yes.
Right? They have, like, their personalities, and that is about it. And these stories are not anywhere near as bad as that. But there's just a similar amount of things that need to happen in the limited amount of pages.
Yeah.
When you have... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying that, like, when she does get a chance to breathe a bit with the characters, like, every character gets, a few lines of dialogue, and then they get, like, their badass moment where they do their badass thing, and they get to roll a 20 on their check, and, it's very dramatic. And I thought those were actually fairly effectively written, but they did seem jarring compared to the previous, like, it would be like... It felt like you were on a bar crawl, only you were sprinting between various locales as hard as you possibly could. Yeah. And then you got to wherever you were going, and you got to enjoy it for a whole 5 sentences. And then it was off to somewhere else. Yeah,
I think the stories, I know I'm not much of a critic. I like almost everything. I can enjoy something about pretty much everything. I think the stories were very well written and they were very immersive and great. And I just wanted more of them. Yeah. I just wanted more story. Here's my pitch. WotC, let the authors rate what they think is an appropriate thing and pay them for that. And use that. but also have them and your editors go through and make a 6,000 word cut so you can read the extended edition, essentially.
Yeah.
There's for all of us grognards who want to know all about the character motivation and all of that, but you're like, oh, people aren't going to read 15,000 words, and you're probably right. But some people want to read 15,000 words.
Yeah, you could, I don't know, like, take that extended story and let, print it off and maybe bind it in some kind of cover.
For people who really liked it, they could collect it in a physical
some
form.
kind of physical, like, some kind of dongle, right, that you could purchase at a retailer.
Yeah.
Or I'm just spitballing here.
Or just online,
Yeah.
A PDF perhaps.
Yeah.
An audiobook.
Yeah, you could print it on some kind of, I don't know, some kind of plastic or maybe a paper thing.
I'm just putting it out there, but like I really do think that they should have like, okay, here's the story, and then if you want, here's the extended edition or here's the extra parts, right? And like those of us who want to read it are going to read it. Those of us who don't want to read it I bet the writers want to write it.
Yeah.
Writers love writing.
Yeah, because like this just feels so hurried to me. And it's
how long did they spend on Phyrexia? Like 12 hours? Maybe?
I don't know. But the anthology stories, not even anthology stories, but the ensemble stories where you have to jump from character to character, and it feels very jarring when you're going from someone who's, pretty practical and pragmatic like Kaya to somebody whose perspective is a bit more lyrical like Tyvar, and then you're jumping to somebody whose perspective is a lot more has a lot more interiority like Jace. Those voices all have a very different character, and going one paragraph to another is
it makes it hard for the reader to really get in the person's head. Like it's hard to get an idea of what the character is like when we don't spend much time getting to know them.
Yes. Yeah. I would really prefer it if the author was allowed to pick a character and run with them. And I get, that might not be satisfying for the audience who are like, oh, but my favorite planeswalker is over there. Why not spend some time with them?
Have a conversation with them then.
Yeah.
That's how you get to know characters in books all the time.
Yeah. And like Tolkien was able to do that, but he had, the 1,000 pages of Lord of the Rings in order to tell his ensemble story. And you definitely spend more time with certain characters than others.
Some characters are sometimes flavors.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it was I thought it was well written. I would like to see more of it. I would like, cause like I enjoy the accelerated release cycle of the Magic story. Like, I like when they're not like, here's a dribble of lore, here's a dribble of lore, because they would do it over a while. And then they pushed it all together for one of the releases, and I can't remember which one it was. And people were like, actually, this is better, because I don't like being like, okay, we get this, like, and then we get 2 weeks later, we get that, right? It was a very long rollout, because I think they wanted to give people time to read it, but it never got any momentum. But I feel like this is, they're like, bang, 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 here's all the stuff. And then that I feel is a little bit too quick. And then the internet, because some people read real fast, and some people have children and jobs and other things going on and have to be like, all right, I'm going to make time to finish reading this the night before I record my podcast. Don't have a chance to read it. And it's just like, okay, well, everything's already spoiled for me. Cool. Which I don't really mind. Because, kind of can see from the cards anyhow that have come out that, things aren't going great.
Yeah. But, I mean, I guess the thought is that anyone who is really reading Magic Story and is invested in it and is thinking, oh, like, I'm really curious about how this plays out. Like, what are they going to do about Worldbreaker? Is probably already familiar enough with the characters that, you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time exploring Jace's interiority around why he is grief-stricken that Vraska has been completed. That's probably fairly self-explanatory for anyone who is invested in the Magic story, but it still feels hurried.
And also, like, there's a lot of people who are definitely coming into, like, a lot of people have started playing Magic over the past 5 years. And if you've only started playing over the past 5 years, you may have been sort of aware of Ixalan, but maybe you weren't at the point of reading the web fiction at that time.
Yeah, which I still think is kind
Very
of the high
good.
mark of Magic web fiction. Was the Ixalan story.
The Ixalan story was so good, and the block was so meh to play. Such sad disconnect. But anyhow, like, I still think it's worthwhile to include that, because people, like, I don't know, like, if you're really invested, but maybe you forgot a bit, that came out a while ago, or you're a newer player. Yeah. I'm just saying, put the story out there and give people the option to read more and to understand these characters more if they want.
I really enjoyed Jace and Vraska's kind of last day together. Although I was a bit surprised that Jace took her on a date around, planned to take her around Ravnica. I would have thought that maybe they would have gone back to Ixalan.
But
for that, right? Which is kind of like, hey, remember where we met? And it was like tender and genuine, and we were both kind of unguarded for a while.
Yeah, I assume that they went to Ravnica because they're both basically from Ravnica.
Yeah.
Right?
But I mean,
Jace isn't, but he spent a lot of time there.
Yes, yeah. But it just felt like, hey, remember when we used to go on lunch dates before work? Right? Like, let's go back to our plane where we work.
I mean, but maybe, like, that's like, remember when we didn't have to do all of this, like, we weren't involved in big, ridiculous schemes against other people. You weren't actually working for Nicol Bolas.
Right.
You were just doing your own thing. This is the place that you grew up and you're going to be the most familiar with. I'm honestly kind of surprised you didn't take her to the Undercity.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I was thinking was that it mentions that he takes her, like, they go to art galleries and museums. And I just kind of wanted to know what the pieces of art they were looking at are. Because when you're in a dream, one of the tricks is that, if you want to be lucid dreaming, you flip through a book. And the pages will be blank or they'll be indecipherable.
Yeah, just smears.
Yeah, so I wanted to know what the pieces of art they were looking at looked like. Because presumably they would be things they were unfamiliar with.
It's all just Phyrexians.
Yeah, it would be elided in some way.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that. I'm a big fan of Ravnica. I mean, I feel like...
And this is all like, I mean, the fact that we can make these inferences about the characters and think things through, like, oh, well, I mean, I thought it was an interesting decision, rather than, oh, I didn't like this and it was out of character, right? That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, right? Like, I wanted to see something else for those characters, not because I thought this was bad, but because I have an idea of what those characters are like.
I would like, so now the part that, now let's throw some ideas around. I don't know what's going to happen in the story. Cameron doesn't know what's going to happen in the story. I assume things will work out okay in the end.
Yeah.
To varying degrees of okay. We've been warned by Mark Rosewater that there's a big change coming to Magic story. I don't know what that means.
I mean,
There's been a new card type teased called Battle.
Yes.
But I think that's more related to, like, the story of the next block than Magic going forward, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, my theory on that would be some kind of sub-game card.
Yeah.
Right? Or, like, not a full sub-game, but some kind of clause like that. But
finally, Shahrazad.
Well, it's clearly a design space that they enjoy.
Yeah.
But is miserable, so maybe they found some way to make it work.
Yeah.
But completion definitely seems permanent, especially Vraska's kind of understanding of it, or the way they describe what happens to Vraska, definitely seems permanent.
Yeah, the way they just, well, in Tezzeret's story, I'm not going to describe it, but they have Tezzeret's a very plain thinking guy, so they have a horrible description of what completion is like, because he talks about Tameo.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think there's any coming back from that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone there anymore.
But that's a different process by which Nahiri and Jace were completed, but it's strongly implied that Nahiri and Jace are actually like dead.
Yes.
Like that's their bodies that are getting up and walking around, because that happens on Phyrexia. You doesn't need to be anything behind the eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
There seems to be two processes. One where like you get infected with the oil and it's a kind of organic process that takes place over days or weeks. And another where it's
Where it kills you.
Yeah, Jin-Gitaxias can just do surgery on you.
Yeah, where he's just going to kill you and replace all your parts with sort of classic Phyrexian.
Yeah.
Right? There's classic Phyrexian, which is this is a living corpse made of machines that obey, and this is something that turns your mind.
Yes. So
who knows?
I think that would be interesting if we got to explore that a little bit, because I mean, what happened? Like Elish Norn. I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure Elish Norn wasn't a person before New Phyrexia.
No.
Right? Like, there are the Phyrexians who are the product of the oil itself, who emerge kind of ex nihilo from the oil, and then there are the people who have been completed by it.
Yeah, have been
transformed
repurposed,
by it.
essentially.
Yes.
I feel like there's the Phyrexians that sort of emerge from the oil and have kind of come with these pesky things called personalities and ambitions.
Yes.
And goals. So that's exciting.
Yeah. It feels like my read on the Praetors is that they're what happens when Phyrexian oil interacts with
Mirrodin.
Well, yeah, or elemental sources of mana.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mirrodin is very obviously it's an all metal plane and stuff like that, but it has the 5 suns that, have changed the Phyrexians. The Phyrexians are now not classic Yawgmoth Phyrexians. Right? So it's interesting. The sort of distinction isn't really, maybe it'll get explored more, maybe it won't.
With their invasion of the multiverse now in full swing, maybe we will get my fantasy, like my dream set, which would be the Phyrexians invading Lorwyn in its Shadowmoor aspect.
Oh my god, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, like they invade Shadowmoor, and then the plane flips back to Lorwyn, and everything is like bunnies and daisies, and they're like, "What the?"
And then they're stuck like that too.
Yeah,
that's the only place the Phyrexians live.
Yeah.
Oh. It turns into bunnies and daisies, and they immediately get eaten by boggarts. And they're like, delicious. Tastes like lobster. I love Lorwyn. I've already pitched my idea for a dumb Lorwyn planeswalker, which I might write some fan fiction about.
Yeah, the goat.
Well, yeah. I had an idea. It's like, okay, so what if every time they summon a goat, I feel like they can just summon a goat when they're in distress. They summon a different goat from Magic.
No.
So sometimes most of the time they summon normal goats, but sometimes they summon horrible goats. Powerful, scary goats.
I'm here for it.
They could summon Zedru eventually for like a tete-a-tete.
Yeah. Ooh, I like it.
So anyhow, maybe that's some shower thoughts. But so things that I think is going to. I've seen some wild theories on the internet, and here's my personal theory that Elspeth has this bowl full of Jace's emotions.
Yeah, like it says that it's basically he fills the Silex with his grief.
Yes.
Around Vraska.
Yeah.
Right. And it describes it as kind of being like honey thick.
So sad.
Yeah.
So she's got Jace's sad. But I saw a wild theory that it's like, what if Jace just poured himself into the Silex and she's got his consciousness as well?
Yeah. Like all of the good around him and Vraska's relationship. Right. His best self.
Yeah.
Which would be, that would be interesting.
And Jace becomes some sort of like mind mist.
Yeah. Or some kind of counterpart to the oil.
He's some sort of like an Ugin almost, like doesn't sort of exist in a corporeal form, but is like a free floating intelligence almost.
Yeah. But
I think that could be a good ending for Jace, where he's still kind of technically alive and can show up. He can make himself like an android body. He can basically be like Vision
Yeah,
Kinda.
yeah. Although, like, now the Silex is gone, Elspeth took it to the blind eternity, beyond the blind eternities.
I think so. Here's my personal pet theory: is she's beyond the blind eternity. So I think she's going to go. I think she's got to meet the grandma of all angels.
Sarah?
I think she's going to go and have a little chat. A real chat? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. But then again, like, there is the white removal spell that's been spoiled. It's the 5 mana common exile permanent spell.
Yeah.
That shows Elspeth getting blowed up by the Silex. So I assume if she planeswalks to Sarah's realm.
Well, Sarah's realm was gone, right? Sarah's realm was destroyed originally by Phyrexians, right?
Right.
You have to remember that. And they used Sarah's Power Stone to do a bunch of stuff in the Brothers War story. So, but like, I don't know. I just think that's a good place for Elspeth to have finally, like, somebody be like, my child.
Yeah.
I think she needs that. And Sarah, the creator of the Angel Plane, has mysteriously, just been, I don't know, is she canonically dead, or just kind of like disappeared? I'm going to look it up.
I don't know, honestly.
One sec. Checking MTG Wiki.
I would also be okay with these characters being permanently dead. Like, maybe it's just a thing where the Magic team is like, we've made so many Jace cards. We don't know how to play in this configurational space anymore with his abilities.
I mean, I think and like, the thing is, we have Tezzeret, we have Teferi, we have Will, we have a lot of blue planeswalkers, we have too many planeswalkers. I'm okay with just them not being active planeswalkers anymore, but still around, so everybody gets what they want.
Yeah.
Like, the character gets some kind of, like, proper send-off, something happens to them, but they don't have to be on cards anymore. But they could still, occasionally show up in a non-card-based form that's sort of, important to the story. Let's see. Okay. Well, I'm literally on the MTG Wiki, which is a good place to go. All right. Apparently, Sarah was murdered in Circe. When Sarah fled Sarah, heartbroken, fled Algolthra to Circe on Dominaria, and then hid in amongst some wandering refugees, possibly from her plane after her plane gets blown up. She got attacked, should have been able to heal herself, but just like, she was so heartbroken and completely lost her will to live, so she used the last of strength to sanctify the land around her. And then you have the Church of Sarah that comes up from her sanctifying this land. So yeah, I feel like she did, but I feel like if anyone has an afterlife, I think it's the mother of all angels, the real mom.
Yeah.
Let's go talk to real mom.
Mother's War.
That's my pet theory. We'll see if it turns out. Am I very good at guessing these things? I mean, sometimes there's evidence.
Sometimes.
I feel like anyone could have guessed that about Luca, though, if you'd read any of the stories.
Yeah. I think I said something like Luca is going to try to bond with a Phyrexian thing and wind up basically being one of those male anglerfish.
Luca is foolish and met a fool's end.
Yep.
I mean, I'm okay with having more stupid planeswalkers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why do they all have to be good at things?
I mean, if we can have Luca, we can have a goat summoning planeswalker who can only summon goats. Sometimes they're scary goats, and sometimes they're just goats.
Yep. Have a goat.
Can you do 2 goats?
Give me some time.
Everyone's magic is different.
And eventually he's like, man, I wish people valued me for something other than my goat being a goat font.
Yeah. I mean, you can very slowly end hunger. Although the goats have to be coming from somewhere.
Yeah. No, he's really more of a goat redistributor.
Yeah. He can sense the location of any goat in the multiverse, and he can bring it to him. And that's the improvement he gets, is he can pick and choose which goat he grabs.
The goat cultivator. The goat selector.
Yeah.
I mean, this is goat god, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His other powers, I feel like, I mean, you can't make him too sensible.
No.
You can't make him too Arthur Dent.
No. Yeah.
I mean, you could make him a little bit Arthur Dent, and you could give him a sensible friend.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I enjoy the idea of Luca being just somebody that gives everyone else a headache.
Well, not anymore. Now he can bother Vorinclex. Vorinclex is going to regret having him completed.
Yeah. Where, Luca says something and doesn't even get to finish his sentence before Vorinclex is just like, shut up. Oh my God.
Actually, oh my God, wouldn't it be so great is if it's like, haha, Luca got completed, and Luca is, because he is Luca, is like, I am the strongest Phyrexian. You know what? If I can complete this beast, I will actually give Luca the big old thumbs up if he ends up killing like a bunch of Phyrexians, because he's the kind of person who just wants to fail up, right?
Yeah. If he winds up being kind of like Wheatley from Portal 2. For Phyrexia, where his just stubbornness and lack of vision and lack of planning ability just kind of,
I do what I want right now.
Yeah, his impulsiveness.
And his refusal to listen to anybody other than himself.
Yeah.
Is like absolutely gets them. Oh, actually, 100%. A+.
Yeah, Luca is just 4 hours into a meeting is like, this could have been an email, and everyone else is like, we were actually finding this quite productive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like the big payoff for Mom is just like, everybody shows up and then Luca's completed, and then somewhere from Kai's like, haha, you fell for our cunning plan.
Yes, we gave you our finest idiot. It's like the from World War II, the American OSA created a manual for people working in occupied territories. That was how to sabotage something while coloring within the lines of a bureaucracy. Luca is just that.
Well, on that optimistic note for how March of the Machines is going to shape out, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who listened to an hour and 11 minutes of this. Hopefully you like lore. If you do like lore, tell us in the comments, because we can keep doing this. We can keep reading and discussing story if that is something that you are interested in.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested in it.
Yeah, I would do it.
Yeah. So, let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed this. Thank you so much to CardKingdom.com, the sponsor of this podcast and the fine purveyors of Magic card across their own mighty kingdom, which includes, for sealed products, the contiguous United States.
Yes.
No, all United States, in contiguous, but not Canada, and for singles anywhere in the world.
Yes.
So thank you so much to them. And please say loading earlier on and sent me button, please. And you'll get a button that says a pox on the auto tapper. And thank you so much to you and your kind support of us through Patreon at patreon.com. We literally could not do this without you. Thank you so much for enabling us to spend a bunch of time thinking about magic lore and what we'd like to see changed and improved and what we liked and where we hope it goes.
Yeah, you did this.
Yeah, thank you. So until next time, I've been Kathleen. That was Cameron, and this has been TapTapConcede. Bye!